Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about the agents of the pollination. We all know that we need agents or we need workers or also called by the name postman for the cross pollination, as the postman work that to transfer a mail from one person to the another person in another place. That's how the agents or in the cross pollination helps the pollen grains to transfer from the male part of the flower to the female part of the flower in different plant. Now the agents of pollination are, first one is the insect pollinated. That means here the insects will help in the cross pollination. Basically these insects are not intentionally, or we can also say that they are not only for the pollination, but they store or they secretes the nectars from the flowers and use it as a food. Now the insect pollinated flowers are also known by the term entomophilous. Entomo means the insects and the philous means basically the phyle means the affinity or the power. Now in which flowers basically these insects help? Basically in the brightly colored flower, that is the dahlia, and the second one also known by the gulmohar, or we can also take an example of a sunflower also. Now the some characteristics that insects help in this pollination are: the flower might be a large in shape, they basically have to be usually brightly colored, or these flowers basically brightly colored to attract the insects. Third one says that they emit the scent for attracting insects. Basically if they want the cross pollination to do, they need to attract the insects. For that they need to be brightly in colored so that insects come and sit on the anther of the flower. Now they have to be basically produce scent or fragrance for attracting insects. Fourth one says that they produce nectars. These nectars which is food for the insect, basically these nectars are the food for the insects. They come and sit on that to suck the food from the flower. The fifth one says that the pollen grains are basically sticky. Also the pollen grains characters are basically they are sticky or spiny to enable them to attach by the insects easily. Now the second agent of the pollination, that is the wind pollinated. Basically the wind pollinated is known by the another name, that is anemophilous. Here the anemo term means the wind and the phyle means the affinity or the power. These wind pollinated are basically found in the plant, that is the maize, or we can also see in the mango tree. Now these have the characteristics. Basically these usually possess the following special characteristics. The first one is the flowers are basically small in size. They do not need to attract the insects, so they are not brightly colored. They do not produce scent or nectars. All these 3 points are related to the same reason, that they do not have to attract the insects to sit on them, or they. Fourth one says that the stamens are long and hang out of the flowers. Basically the stamens, the male part of the flower, are basically long and hang out, as the reason is that to be exposed to the wind. Basically the wind will flow and the stamen, basically the male part, from the anther the pollen grains will flow away in the direction of wind and reaches the female part of the flowers. Now fourth one says that the anther are large and loosely attached to the filaments. If the anther will not in shape, in large in shape, and if they are not loosely attached to the flowers, to the filaments, so they will not able to move slightly wind from the slightly wind. Sixth one says that the pollen grains is produced in very large quantity. The reason is that this is from the wind pollination. In wind pollination there is high chance of wastage of pollen grains, so flower have to produce large quantities of pollen grains for the wind pollination. Now the third one, that is the another agent, that is the water pollinated. Now this water pollinated is also known by the term hydrophilus. Whenever the term water comes, there is a relevant another word, that is the hydro, that means the water. Now this water pollination is found in the Vallisneria plants, basically found in the aquatic plant. These plants are basically grow inside the lake or pond. Now they have some special characters for the transfer or for the pollination. The first one, that is the pollen grains are produced in large number. In water pollination also, as in the wind pollinated flowers also, the pollens are produced in very large quantities. In water pollination, the pollen grains are also produced in large quantities, as they have the high risk of wastage of pollen grains. The second one says that the pollen grains have a specific gravity almost equal to that of water, as so that they remain floating below the surface of the water. If they will not float above or below the surface of the water, they will not able to cross pollinate between the male flowers and the female flowers. The third one says that in some cases, they are basically special cases, in male flowers are such that they float on the surface of the water till they meet the flowers. Basically, till in some male flowers, these are basically floating on the surface of the water till they meet the female flowers. This is basically, for the example, if we take for the aquatic plant, that is the Vallisneria. This is the aquatic plant that is floating inside the lake, and the male flower basically float on the surface. The fourth one is the artificial pollination. Whenever the artificial terms came or come, there is always a scientist or a man or a human for the experiment. Now, when man himself transfer pollen grains from one flower to the another flower, or we can also say that this is an experiment, that is also known by the another name, that is the breeding, or also called by the cross pollination. Now in this process, basically the scientists remove the anther, that is the male part, in young flowers. This process is called the emasculation. Emasculation terms means the removal of the male part from the flower. Basically, the scientists remove, or the experimenting men remove the young anther in the young flowers, and the removal part is covered by the plastic bag. Now later on, they pollinate such flowers with the pollen from the plant of the desired variety, and they get the flowers whichever variety the scientist want. In the next part of the video, we are going to talk about the fertilization. Till then, thanks for watching.